All right, so we got the great Ryan Kelly in the house. He's running the show operationally for the American Athletic Conference, which is really cool. A conference near and dear to my heart, a conference that's had a ton of success in a lot of sports, specifically football on the national scale, basketball. Houston had a huge run this year as well as other teams. But uh, the fun part about being a player for me is the social side of sports. And we're going to talk about that a little bit with Ryan today. But, you know, someone always said to me, like, it's not good that the thing that you value the most in sports is the social side of it. And here I am in the NFL playing and have a role in the team that I'm very blessed to have. And I look back and I'm like, you know what, maybe it is a good thing that this, my favorite part of football is the social side of it. What are your thoughts on that, Ryan?
I think it's the people that make everything. It's the relationships, it's who you meet along the way and different stops along your journey that really make it special and make it, exciting when you go to a new spot and you start a new chapter. And it's, even sometimes in those chapters, as you know, and I know, those people go with you, but their lives change. People get married, they have kids, they grow old, they go through different things, but it's a community aspect, and the social thing makes it. It's just, if you're that type of person like you and I are, it makes everything that much better.
It does. It really does. It doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel like work. Like
No.
someone was talking about today in our facility, like, oh, what are you looking forward to tomorrow? I'm like, I'm looking forward to going to tight end meetings with Angelico, our tight end coach, because the guy's an absolute character. First off, he's the best at his job, right? That always goes without saying. Like, the work's going to get done. You're going to be first class approach to what you're going to do. You're going to do all the cliche things you're going to do for your job, but the social side of it makes it. I'm sure you have some people in the office there that you really enjoy going to work with every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, going to those different spots, meeting those different people, you create bonds. And, that's why I got involved in what I do and why you got involved in what you do. Those people make it fun to get up in the morning and go to work. And that's why it doesn't feel like work, but it's still meaningful and special to you.
No doubt, no doubt. And meaningful and special is something. Definitely a couple words I'd say for the picture behind you, behind Ryan. For those listening and not on the YouTube watching the show, is the American Conference Championship 2016. Your Temple Owls, Deion Dawkins and Finch, and looks like
Like
Roman and
Avery in the suit.
Avery in the suit. Can you tell that story with Avery in the suit? Well, first off, we won the conference championship at Navy in Annapolis, Maryland, which for those listening know is one of my favorite places on earth. And Ryan, how we met was, and you heard this already, is Ryan was in operations at Temple and was young in his career. And we became good pals and had a great time and was a part of a great staff and team there that achieved a lot of success. But Avery Williams is behind you in a suit, one of our best players on the Temple football team, single digit guy that gave everything to Temple in that community. But he's in a suit and everyone's in full uniform holding the trophy up. Why?
So I think it was early in the second quarter or late in the first quarter, definitely the first half. Avery got ejected for targeting. So part of a great ops guy is that you have to go in the locker room and make sure he stays in the locker room and everything. So, knowing Avery, he got in there and had to blow off steam a little bit, pacing back and forth. Man, I can't believe this. One of the most dedicated, toughest, obviously single digit guy that we had. My heart felt for him, but I'm in there trying to console him as much as possible. And said, Avery, if you want to say your stuff, say your stuff. If not, get changed. I got to take a shower. So he goes and takes a shower. I don't know if he's going to have shorts and jersey on or whatever. Come in and he's in a full suit. So towards the end of the game, when we had it pretty much wrapped up, I was getting told by a conference member, the part of the game is that he's got to stay off the field and in the locker room the whole time. And you remember Greg Valancisi had the belt, had the wrestling belt. So Avery's running by me, and I'm trying to hold him up, but I'm not really getting in the way. And sure as hell, he's behind us in the stands with the belt over his head and gets his hand on the trophy, and it's right front and center of, where he should be. But again, you never knew what was going to happen with some of you guys.
Yeah, we had quite the characters, quite the group, and quite the staff. I will say, we had a lot of fun and a lot of guys I get to work here alongside with and gals in Carolina, which has been really cool. So you've got to do some really unique things working with the American Athletic Conference. But I saw something on Facebook and really just prompted it. I'm like, I got to get Ryan on. I'm seeing pictures of Air Force One, and I don't know the whole story behind it, but can you share that with those listening at home?
So our conference photographer I've became really close with. Ben Solomon, and he a couple of years back had become personal photographer for President Obama's family, and through his time, Vice President Biden, and got to work some operational stuff, and kind of went in and out of that life into the sports life, and our cross paths. And like I said, we became close, and we were just down in Fort Worth for our basketball tournament, and he gets a call, and it's Vice President Harris's staff saying, hey, we'd really like you to come up. We need some help, get boots on the ground, people that know this process, how it works, everything like that. So I don't hear from him for a couple of weeks, which is nothing unusual, but I see on the news that she's coming to Rhode Island. Vice President Harris is coming to Rhode Island, which is obviously where I live. And he texts me one night, and he's like, hey, would you like to be a motorcade driver for the vice president? And I look at it, I'm like, I'm not biting on this one. So I wait a day. He calls me. He's like, seriously, I need to know, like, I'm planning this trip. Do you want to do it? I'm like, okay. I'm absolutely honored that, he thinks of me that much of an ops guy to drive in the motorcade. I've done it before, and, obviously haven't, knock on wood, rear-ended anybody so far. But so I say, okay, I roll my eyes, I tell my wife, and sure as hell, two seconds later, I get a call from the White House. Put me through this big screening thing. They sent me a background check to do. I'm like, oh, so me sometimes, like, pretty laid back. I'm like, well, where are we going? Like, sir, we can't tell you that until you show up on site. I'm like, oh, okay. So they're like, we'll be in touch. And 3 days later, I got a call the day before, and they're like, hey, be at the airport at 8 a.m. Don't bring anything that you wouldn't have going through security at the airport. So sure. Next thing you know, I'm sitting in a black SUV on the tarmac of TF Green, right where we landed when we played UMass. And, AF2, Air Force 2 comes in, lands, and I was actually the third car in the motorcade. So it was the vice president. Then in the second car, it was the former governor, who's now the Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo, and our current governor. And then I had all of Vice President's senior staff, my car. So it was just cool to be a part of, having an ops background and getting to see, like, cars pulling up, like, on an X, these people here, there. It was clockwork, and they had an itinerary, and it was to the second. So it was a thing of beauty in my eyes. I really enjoyed it. It was a cool experience.
So there's a lot of directions I can go here with this question, but operationally, right, there's some things you've seen over the years, right? Some are more advanced than others. Some happen on a whim. Nothing's happening on a whim there. No, everything's down to the second.
No.
Like you said.
Yeah. And he does all of, like, the legwork out of the White House. So he's planning motorcade drivers. He's like, okay, I can save a seat on the plane because I have a guy that can clear a background check and do the job really well. And now he ended up driving in the front seat with me, but it was just following directions. The guy who is their advance person gets there 5 days in advance, scopes out every place. They bring the vehicles that at least the vice president and the Secretary of Commerce and the governor were flown in from DC. They do a full sweep. I mean, people on buildings, like the whole 9 yards. So it's quite a calculated event. And he left at the end. I was like, oh, thank you so much. Like, I really appreciate this opportunity. It was cool to do. He goes, now that you've done this, I got to get you on doing a car for the president. Obviously not like that high up, but he's like, if you think this is like a big to do, a presidential motorcade is incredible.
They fly the cars in. That makes sense. I mean, if you really sit and think about it, and you're sitting there doing the detail, and you're thinking, what's the most secure thing? You provide everything that could go.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we had to fly, we had to advance our jugs of water to make sure we didn't get the baby water. Shout out Jeremy Scott on that one.
Jeremy. Yeah. Let's bury Jeremy while we have the chance to. Jeremy Scott, strength coach, Carolina Panthers, strength coach, Temple University, Penn State before that. A little bit of Princeton. Great guy. We're going to have him on the podcast. He's another one of those guys that are complaining that they're not on yet. But when I ask them, they'll say, oh, I don't know. Shout out to Jeremy. Love him. He's one of the favorite coaches I've ever had. And now he's with the Panthers. He was at Baylor. So we got to talk about that. We got a lot of fun stories to talk about, and we'll weave the stories into the serious stuff along the way. So at Temple, and it's a great habit, and I don't know if I want to take credit for this, but I used to bring a gallon jug of water to the meetings. Now, I don't think it happened before I got there, the gallon jugs. Now, that's kind of coming into my head now that I think about it.
Was your first year 14 or 15?
14.
Okay, so you were there I got there after your first year.
Was the first year of gallon jugs being a real thing? Was that your first year?
I think so.
Okay, so when I was at Florida, it was a big thing, right? You were in Gainesville, you need water all the time. You can't be in like class and like go 3-4 hours out some water and then go to practice. So it's a habit that like my dad, we are like big in a family into water. And I know it sounds weird, but we are. And then like health wise and recovery and nutrition for me as a football player, it's huge, right? It's always been something like everything I'm thinking about is like water. So it sounds weird, but it's just what you do. But fast forward, we'd get to the hotel and there would be water gallon jugs there for us, 4 o'clock the day before, the 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock, whenever we got to the hotel the day before the game, with your key card and a cookie from the DoubleTree if we stay there, which shout out to Ops for making that happen. Great work. And they were warm, which is unbelievable operational work. Ryan Kelly, great job. I know it was all you. So can you finish the story for me now that I painted the picture?
So two good ones is obviously they have the jugs we would get. Sometimes if we were going to like Houston or somewhere far, we wouldn't put them in the truck just because it would take up so much room. We'd have them ordered and have them there. So I'm putting all the jugs out, not really paying attention, Thompson, Williams, writing names on, flipping key cards, 1,000 Snicker bars, 1,000 Nutri-Grain bars, bananas, the whole deal. So guys get in, we do our flow, our stretch deal, and I don't know if it was Sarava or Jeremy Scott pointed out that it was like the baby water. I should know what the name of the water is.
Distilled water.
Distilled water, yes. Yeah, as a young father, I should know that. But yes, distilled water, and everybody's like freaking out about it. Like five alarm fire, guys going up to the rooms, pouring out the gallon truck. Like, I don't know how much money we wasted, but learned my lesson once on that. And then there was another time, again, not sure who the initial.
Well, the facts on it, right? I think the facts are in distilled water.
There's just nothing in it. It's just like there's no hydration. There's no positive hydration part about it.
Okay, got it. Okay, good. I want to clarify that for those listening at home.
So
next story. Sorry, yeah. What's the second one? Sorry to interrupt you.
So next one was I got an earful about the bananas not being yellow enough, because I don't know where we were in, Cincinnati in November, or we were somewhere where bananas were not in season and they just didn't have them. And I had no options, because you're better having, it's just like in the meal room, right? You're better to have cold food than no food. So I got the bananas, but they were just green. So like, I'm trying to turn them so like the yellow sides are showing up. But sure enough, someone came and picked. There were probably only 2 people that took bananas that day, and one of them was like, "Oh, it's green." And sure, coach rules within shouting distance and hears it. And again, I never got another green banana in the road. So there's small things that you guys might not have noticed that were big things to other people, and they're fun stories to tell after the fact.
Yeah, and Coach Rule laughs it off, and he knows in the moment that, yeah, it's a green banana. Like, come on, the guy that's complaining about a green banana, are you kidding me? This is a free banana. Like, eat the banana, but like he's also going to give you crap, because everything counts with Coach Rule.
Everything matters.
Everything matters, and that's what I love. Like, it matters how you go enjoy your time away from the building. It matters how you enjoy your time in the building. It matters how you approach practice. It matters how you get it in and, in the hot tub pre-practice. Everything counts. People ask me all the time, what's Coach Rule like? What's Coach Rule like? Because he's had this rise to just stardom, for lack of a better term. And he's been a rocket ship, which is no surprise to you, no surprise to me. And you've worked for Coach Rule now in 2 different places, at Temple and at Baylor University. What's Coach Rule mean to you? Everyone always asks me that question, but I'm going to flip it on to you. What's Coach Rule like to work for and develop a friendly relationship with?
I mean, Coach Rule means an awful lot to me and my family, because he did give me my first full-time job at the Division I level. He did decide to bring me to Baylor to be a part of one of, in my opinion, the greatest rebuilds in Division I football history. So I take great pride in being a part of his life. And I take great pride in the work that I did for him. We became extremely close on a personal level. His daughter was our flower girl at our wedding. Uh, we picked Brian up from school. We spent time with each other's families. He was there when, like I said, when we got married, when my wife had our first child. So all that stuff goes really deep with me, just with how much that matters on a personal level, that I knew at any point in time, if I deeply needed something, he was a guy that, I could rely on. And I'm sure you feel the same way.
Yeah, Coach Rule is a foxhole kind of guy, and someone that means a ton to me. He rebirthed my career when it was completely dead, and was told at the University of Florida that you should no longer play football. You should be able to be healthy and run around with your kids and play t-ball with your sons, and all these different things I heard from team doctors and all these different individuals. And I was like, what are you talking about, man? I'm 19 years old. Like, my career's just getting started. I'm going to play in the NFL. That's what I came to Florida to do, is to win, do well off the field, and then go play in the NFL. Now you're telling me I'm not? Coach Rule is the only school that offered me when I had 30 offers 2 years before, and was the top rated tight end in the country. So he's given me opportunities at all levels. And now here in the NFL, he's given me the opportunity. And every day I fight not to let him down, not let myself down, let the people down that have supported me over the years. He's done a ton for me. But you talked about Baylor. You talked about the turnaround. You said it, right? One of the biggest turnarounds in college football history, if not the greatest. Talk about, right? We know the hurdles that were there. We know the obstacles that happened years before you guys got there. But maybe like a hurdle when you got there that was unique in the sense you're like, wow, we're in Texas. This is a hurdle here compared to where it was before. We're in a small area in Waco, where we're not in Philly, where you have access to so many different things. There's no major airport. Talk about some of the operation hurdles that you got there that you may not have thought were going to be there.
You have your original hurdles of, getting to know vendors, getting to know the people on campus, the go-to people, those people that really make, from an outside perspective, my job easier, and really gets the program moving. I think the biggest thing that we all struggled with was just getting dropped off the grid. Going from Philly, being again, like working for Coach Rule, it's like being in the mafia. You got that tight family that we're all there for each other, and that was probably the best part of the move, is that we all just boom went right down there. But then what is it? What is Whataburger? What is, all these Tex-Mex places and the barbecue joints? And I think Coach Rule and, the coaches that were on the move hired some great local Texas guys that knew Texas like the back of their hand. And they made that transition a lot easier. I mean, I remember the first week we were there, we were in a staff room because Baylor was playing in the Cactus Bowl. And we were on another side of the building, recruiting and doing all that stuff. And Sean and I are scrambling around trying to do housing, and they're still trying to get mid-year guys. And, we had the Texas high school championship games on in the background. And those guys are just talking about, this player and that player and this school and that school. And it's like, Coach went on like a grand tour and getting in helicopters and speaking at clinics and stuff like that. And I'm sure it was a whirlwind for those guys that were out on the road recruiting, but even for, the internal ops guys, getting to know the areas. And, we had one of the first days I was down there, we had one of the compliance guys that had been down there for a while, just showed us around, like, this is where the kids live. This is the good dorm. This is where you want to eat. And, probably one of the biggest things for me is that we were getting driven around. It was me and Pads. And we pull up and he's like, oh yeah, there's this great new coffee place up the road. We'll stop there. Like, okay, we're in the back of this pickup truck bombing around Waco, and he pulls up and it's a Dunkin' Donuts. And I hit Pads. I'm like, hey, we ain't filling anymore. So we had a good laugh at that. But it was just those guys that we hired, and the support from the Baylor community that came in and really helped us, embrace their culture and took us in. Well, they were a huge part of that turnaround as well.
It's unique when you go to a school that's just, Waco exists because of Baylor University. I fight it, even though I think University of Florida is a big city town. It's not. University of Gainesville exists because of the University of Florida. State College, Pennsylvania exists because of Penn State, et cetera, right? It goes on. Everyone knows the schools, the state schools. But when you're at Temple, you could pull Temple out of there tomorrow. People have no idea in Center City and South Philly that Temple's not there. So as a coach, as a staff member, first off, there's great suburbs to live in. You could live in the city in a nice area. You can hide out and go to dinner here and no one would ever see you or know who you are. You could get on a train. You could be in DC in 2 hours, New York in 2 hours, Boston, whatever you want to do. You can be mobile. Waco, it's a different vibe. It's a different vibe.
It was different. And you had also people buying houses for the first time. So that's a whole different process coming from someone that didn't buy a house until we moved back here to Rhode Island. But, for the first, I would say 30 to 40 days, Los and I split a hotel room at the Hilton in downtown Waco, just because we didn't know where to go. So again, you'd get in a car with somebody and you'd hear about this area and you get hooked up with this realtor that knows this person. And they take you around and try to show you. But, you got recruiting, you got official visits, your family's back home. You're trying to do it. Like I'm trying to send my wife pictures and, you never know how it's going to be, but you embrace it. You have fun with it. And, going back to our original conversation, the people make it what it is. So we knew we were down there having a good time and working hard together. And that's what made it a lot easier.
It's funny. We go out in the field and that's the product everybody sees, right? 10 games a year in college, whatever it is, 17 games a year this year in the NFL. But the leg work, it's not even you can't even discuss it because it's so ginormous.
Especially in college nowadays. I mean, the calendar just doesn't stop. You go preseason camp, your season. If you're lucky enough to make a bowl game, you're going through Christmas. Now you don't have a holiday. Then you're into early recruiting into January. Once that gets done, you're into spring ball. Once that happens, you're into camps. You get a gallon and jug of water and you're right back at it the next season.
Yeah, you get your 2 weeks off and then the 1 week you have to be partially in at the end of July.
That carousel goes up and down. And, when the kids are on campus so much, basically, as you're really only getting the Maymaster off, then you get summer 1, summer 2. Coach was great enough at Temple to let guys leave 4th of July weekend, get another weekend off, long weekend off before we got into camp and transition. But, the college game nowadays with recruiting and camps and the length of the season, it's a grind and it's a constant grind.
It is, man. I remember our senior year, we got our first Maymaster off. And Scotty Wallace, shout out to Georgia Tech Ops, got a call and he said, "Hey man, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm in Gainesville. I'm ready to fly back in a couple of days." He said, "You're good." I'm like, "I'm good. What do you mean I'm good?" The anxiety kicks in because you got to be back. Oh, yeah. It's time to get back to work. I've been training. And he's like, "You're good, man. You don't need to come back for the next month."
And that was a huge reward of guys that did well in the classroom. Yeah. And that's really what that was a result of. It's like, okay, we really did well in mat drills. We killed spring ball. These guys just gave us everything athletically, academically, physically. Let's give them a month off, 3 weeks off, or whatever it ended up being. But, again, you get back and you're right back at it.
Yeah. And it felt great. I mean, listen, and for those guys that weren't there that month off, I was doing summer school. I was online. Like I'm still grinding and moving and shaking, but it was very nice to have that kind of freedom. You almost felt like a pro for a little bit that you could have that. And it's something I look finally back on, but we'll pivot back to the AAC and then we're going to pivot to some stories and we'll wrap things up. So COVID, right? Everyone knows the monster. You've been asked the question a million times. How do you guys handle COVID? How did it go? But when you look back, what would you have changed? Or I guess, yeah, what would you have changed? Because there's some things you look back at, you say, yeah, I wish I would have done that a little bit differently. But it's hard to forecast COVID, or, you look back at a championship game and say, or a game that got canceled or et cetera, but just elaborate the COVID process and maybe some things you would have changed.
I'm just going to get the first one that I was really happy with was that, our staff, our coaches, our medical group, everybody under the sun that works in an athletic program and a football program that about, all the credit to them to getting us there. We never bumped our start date back. We never took our feet off the ground. We kept moving the thing forward. And as my boss says, we were building the airplane as we were flying it. But we got there. And the fact that we started on time, we pushed our championship game back to I believe it was like the 18th. But that gave us some buffer weeks towards the end of the season. It was the 17th, so the 3rd and the 10th to make up games if we needed to. So the fact that we started on time really helped us, because you saw with some of the other, teams across the country, they were trying to get games in at the end. It was just like, there's just no dates to play. So you had some teams playing in conference championship games, playing in bowl games that, didn't have a lot of playing time under the belt. Thank God for Zoom and technology. I couldn't imagine if we had a pandemic back in the 80s where you couldn't get on a Teams meeting, you couldn't get on a Zoom meeting. Like, we're pulling people, our conference is the American, we're all over the place. But to be able to get a person from Houston, Philadelphia, Tampa, and Cincinnati on a call on a whim to figure something out made it a lot easier. I think if we could have changed something, it was, maybe being a little bit more firm with putting policies together quicker. But that was still an evolving process, because, we had that second wave or whatever wave it was over the summer. And then the restrictions kept getting different. And again, with us being all over the place, we were dealing with Florida and Texas, 2 states that, obviously are the way they are. And Pennsylvania being the way that they are, throwing the Naval Academy, that the government, so throw that one out. And everybody was dealing with their different stuff on campus. I mean, Temple ended up having a tent out on their practice field just so they could lift and change and do all that stuff, because God knows you can only get a couple of people in those. You can't socially distance in some of those meeting rooms. So everybody was kind of dealing with their own stuff. So I think, at a certain point of it, we just kind of pulled back as a league and let the teams work with their local government officials to figure out how they can make it work over the summer in their facilities.
It's an unbelievable juggling act that you guys did, and it's fantastic. A successful year. Obviously, Cincinnati had a really big year and carried the torch for the American Athletic Conference. Can you talk about them as a team? Talk about the Final Four and your thoughts on all that as a whole.
Yeah. Cincinnati's an unbelievable team with a great coaching staff. And I remember my first experience of going out to Cincinnati with Coach Fickle as a head coach was a spring practice. And I had been to a couple spring practices around the league and stuff like that. But I walked in, they have this bubble, and you just heard guys coaching and players like hitting and the pads clamping. And it felt like I was back at a Tuesday practice at Temple. That's what it felt like. And, that's the result that they put on the field. What they preach, through their social media and their recruiting and everything, they are as advertised. And I think a lot could be said for that, for a team's culture. But they showed up every week. They were well prepared. They handled COVID extremely well with a lot of stuff that they went through. They played a fantastic Tulsa team in the championship game. I felt bad for Cincinnati as a football program and as a community, because I think we only ended up having about 7,000 fans at that game. And if that was a true championship game at 8:00 primetime ABC, that place would have been rocking. And we played a primetime game out there when you were playing. And so that environment that I'm talking about. But
it's a beautiful stadium in the south end, in the south end zone. I think it's south end zone.
Yep.
They have almost like a city hall, and then the seats go straight up, and yeah,
it's a student section back there. And I believe did you have a touchdown that game down in that end?
I did not. I did not. Only one touchdown in my career. One. And that was against USF, Thursday Night Football, 2016.
God, I thought
it's the opening of our podcast. So when you pop this podcast on, you hear the great Harry Donahue on the call. And Sharga Armstead split backs. I've heard it a million times now because I edit the podcast and get it going. So
that's great.
Yeah, fond memories, and we're going to talk about that. Let's talk about first we'll talk about let's discuss this, and I'll get into about how great the American Athletic Conference is city-wise. I love playing in it. My family loved partying and traveling in and coming to games. But so you're going to a spring practice and you're traveling throughout the year to go to all these different things. What are you doing? right? What's a part of your job when you're going to a Cincinnati spring practice?
So usually I'll make a call a couple weeks ahead, tell them I'm coming in. It's just it's for me to get more face time to see the program up front. Being the main liaison for the DFO, for the facility liaison, for the equipment guy, for the video guy, I like to get in and, meet with them face to face and get to see their program up close and see their coaches and kind of spend a day, get in the morning. If it's a morning practice team, get in there and watch a whole practice. And once they get off the field, make my rounds and see those guys and, maybe stop at a hotel or two in the city, knowing that we have to book hotels for all 11 cities, not knowing where the championship game is going to be. So trying to be productive as I can with the amount of time that I have, but knowing that it's easy to get in and out of just because of the convenience of the cities that we're in.
Before we transition to the cities, you just had a great point there. You have to reserve 2 hotels in every city.
No, so the home team's required to book theirs. So that's part of their deal. They just extended out a game, but I have to get 11 visiting team hotels with a 7-day cancellation policy for a room block that big with food and beverage. It's amazing. But again, that kind of income that can, like a football team staying for just that 24-hour period and hitting 4 meals, snack, dinner, breakfast, lunch, dinner the next day because it's a night game, late checkout. So the money that that can bring in, I think it's worth it. And then as we go along, as people become mathematically eliminated from hosting, we just cancel the contract. So it's a lot of work up front. I'm starting to go through it right now. Usually have them all booked up by the probably July, beginning of July. So going into the season, everybody knows like, hey, if you're going to Houston, you're staying at the JW Marriott. If you're going to Navy like we did, you're staying at the Hyatt Inner Harbor. It's easy. It's easy for them that I just throw the contact out and be like, hey, here you go. And then we give our host team and our visiting team a stipend, and it covers their travel. And we also provide a charter so that the visiting team doesn't have to worry about a charter. I have a 183 seat plane reserved, and it's ready to go to 11 different cities. I just got to tell it where to go.
That's the coolest part about operations. I used to love coming up and sitting in with you guys, eating lunch or whatever. I'm like, all right, what's the latest? What's going on? I always say,
something.
It's always something. There's always a hurdle that needs to be to keep the team moving. Then the players, 90% of them don't even notice it. 99% don't even notice it. Maybe the 1%. Great. That's the way it should be, right? That's exactly what you want.
Yep.
You're like the offensive lineman. If you don't know your name,
No, I say it's like I was a specialist in college. I was a kicker and punter in college. And I said, ops is just like being a specialist. If you don't hear his name and nothing's said, then you're doing your job and everything's good.
You're doing your job. So you mentioned the cities in the Great American Conference. I love Annapolis. You have Philly. Then you work your way down ECU. What a tremendous environment to go watch a game at. The people are the nicest human beings on earth. My parents said, and my in-laws to be said that when they went to our Temple ECU game 2015
Thursday night.
Yep, trying to get ready to play Notre Dame. People thanked them for coming. People thanked them. They thought it was a joke, and I was like, thought they were like Eagles fans, like pulling a prank.
You don't get that in Philly.
Joke's on you, buddy. No, he was like literally like they are thanking us for coming to their town, and I loved it. I called games at Temple for 3 years. I called 2 games at ECU. So
saw you a couple times on the road.
Yes, correct. That was always a highlight, a big embrace in the hallway, and we would take off and go somewhere. We grabbed in Cincinnati. We grabbed breakfast. I believe that was in Cincy.
Yeah,
that was great. So that's another part. That was just so much fun. But there's great. You get Cincinnati's a big city, lots to do. Houston, Dallas, obviously the Florida hubs. Everyone loves traveling there. You got USF in Tampa, UCF in Orlando. I'm sure I'm forgetting a few. But
New Orleans.
Okay, yeah, New Orleans,
Memphis, and Tulsa.
Yeah. And UConn's out now. So yeah, it was really cool, and I loved playing in it. I loved hearing the stories from the families and from those that partaked in the fun the night before the games while we were sleeping and getting ready for bed. But we're going to talk about some fun. We're going to talk about some stories here over the years because we got plenty of them. First, I'm going to dress this story up. and tell my side of it first and intermingle it with your side, because it's a good one. It's an all-timer. And this is a huge recruiting weekend at Temple. This is going into my senior season, and it's February, and we are getting a huge storm. This isn't like, hey, you're going to get 10 inches this weekend, folks. And like,
State of emergency.
We're talking state of emergency. Shut the city down. It happens once every, I don't know, 10, 15 years, 20 years. Shut it down. You're getting 3 feet of snow in the city. When the plows go down the road, it's going to be piles as high as 10 to 15 feet. You need to get your car and yourself out of the city if you can. Okay. So that paints the picture. Coach Rule says to me, I need you this weekend. And it's frequent, right? We have some recruits coming to town that you know. Anthony Russo I went to school with. We went to Archbishop Wood together. And he said, I'd like to be able to host Russo and his family. I know the Russos. We played CYO football together. I said, okay, coach, no problem. Sam Franklin, who's now sits next to me in the locker room, he also came on that weekend, who's never seen snow before. He's from Florida. So I said, no problem, coach. You got it. It was a whole recruiting weekend. I don't know how Sam's flight got in, but that's paints the picture, and I'll intermingle as the story goes on. But I'd love to hear your side of it, Ryan.
So we're obviously all over the place, and we have our fleet of SUVs, as you well know, and 10 passenger vans. So first part of the story that I love is that we're going out of the gates at Temple, and we get in, and it's like, oh, who's going to drive? And coach,
well, let's hold on. Let's pause it. Let's pause it. I'm sorry. There's no restaurants open in the entire city. Not one.
Nothing. So
where are we going?
We are going down to the DoubleTree Hotel. So we're all sitting there, like, kind of palms up, like, who's going to drive? And Coach Rule looks at me. He's like, Ryan's from upstate New York. He's driving in the snow. So I grabbed the keys, and I'm like, God. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to get heckled, how this is going to go. So we get up Diamond, we bang a left on Broad, we're making our way down, and we get to like Girard maybe, and there's just people buried. So Coach Rule jumps out of like the cars, it's moving with like Coop and Mike Wallace, and they just start pushing people out. So like we drive a block, start pushing people out, drive up a block. But I mean, again, to speak to how Coach Rule was in Philadelphia and how our staff was, I mean, that I wasn't surprised. But that I'm trying to slam on the brakes and not hit the person in front of me as they're doing that. So we pushed a couple people out and make our way down, and thank God they had a parking garage down at DoubleTree. So there's nothing more going on than we're going to be at the DoubleTree. We're going to eat at the DoubleTree. We're going to try to walk to some places. We're calling around to see what's open. And we got to a point where it's like, you know how it is. It's like, hey, need an SUV out front now. I can just hear Saravo saying, hey, need an SUV 5 out here now. And, our good friend, student assistant at the time, Brian Fallon, I don't know who flipped him the keys, but someone flipped our student assistant the keys, and he went in and got a 10-passenger van and went into this back alley as, I don't know if he didn't think about backing out or what it was, but, next thing he's kind of like timid, shy, coming through the door, and what's up? He's like, the van's stuck. I'm like, okay, let's go get it. So I go out, and I think it's me and Los and Foles. So Foles is like, get it, I'm driving. So we're out there, we're like trying to, you do the rocket before you're trying to do it. And then, Coach Rule must have caught wind of what was going on. So him and I think it was Damir came out too. I wish I still had the video. I'm sure somebody has it. So, we're rocking the thing, and Coach is just screaming, "Balls, punch it!" So like we're trying to make sure like he doesn't hit ground, and Los and I are in the front, and we're just screaming trying to get it to go. And then Rule's like, "Hold up, Balls, you got the thing in drive?" And then just drove out easily. The thing was in neutral the whole time as he was trying to punch it out. We were just rocking it. The tires must have been spinning, because as soon as he put it in drive, he just drove right around. But
we're good, boys. Don't worry about it. It's good.
Again, okay. A team effort, and something that it's little stuff like that makes you laugh. And you know,
Well, have your
good
next story
stories.
queued up here because I got one more. I'll tell my side of it, and we'll finish with the story as we wrap things up here with the great Ryan Kelly, the director of football operations, American Athletic Conference. So I am behind you guys. So you guys are down there. We're going to meet you. We're going to meet you at that restaurant above the suburban station right across from the Reading terminal. And we're going to meet you guys there.
The field
And
house.
the field house. Correct. Great job. That's great.
That's the only place that was open.
Yep. And it's good. It's a good spot too. It's a good spot. And so end up get in a car, myself, Russo, Sam Franklin, again, who's my locker mate now. And I forget who was driving, but they were from Texas, I believe. Okay. I'm sitting in the front seat. And I'm kind of like a dad figure in the sense that like I was raised like there's one way to do things, like especially in the snow, like, you know, if you don't have change on your tires, you do this, you're driving in load gear, etc. So like that's me. Like, do we have shovels? Like before we leave, like let's put shovels in the back. Do we have some wood or anything that we can prop the tires on just in case we get stuck? We can drive over and continue. So I'm like kind of the dad, and okay, people are laughing at me, you know, I'm tripping, all these different things. Okay, fine. Well, make sure it's in the back. So we do the same thing you guys do. We pull out of EO, which was our facility, make the right, heading up. Let's see, 10th Street. Yep, heading up 10th. Yeah. And we are, I don't know, 200 yards from Broad Street, and the truck just stops because the person driving is just, there's no one on the road. There's no one anywhere. It's a red light. Do not stop. Keep going. I will pay the ticket. If we stop, we're getting stuck. And it's a slight hill up. To Broad Street. And again, I'll reiterate, it's a state of emergency. No cars on the road. No cars. So there's no person anywhere other than Temple football, man. We're getting to get these two kids. They end up coming to Temple actually and having great careers. Anthony's now at Michigan State and Sam Franklin's in the NFL. So long story short, we get stuck. I jump out, shovel us out, and literally shovel up 2 tire tracks, 200 yards, 2 tire track for us
just to get to Broad Street.
Just to Broad Street. And I'm pushing and guys are in the car and my hands are frozen solid. So what I do is I'm like, turn the heat up max. They're like, oh, it's getting too hot in here. I'm like, turn the heat up max. I put my hands up to the heater and we would move and I would shuffle next to the car. Then the car would stop and then I would dig us out again. So everyone played a little bit of superhero that day. And it's a day I'll never forget. And we landed the 2 guys and they were tremendous, all conference players and great American conference players at Temple. So it's something that, of course, we look fondly back on. Whether they would have came or not, it was still for great stories, but it always helps.
I think they had to after that point.
They had to, because Sam tells me now, he's like, man, everyone's jumping through hoops. I'm like, this is the place I need to be. And obviously, you know, Anthony's a local kid and had a great career, and he's going to do great at Michigan State and hopefully makes it to the NFL as well. So, all right, Coach Rule's been the topic today a little bit. Do we have any more fun Coach Rule stories as we finish things up here?
I got one good one. So we're back at Temple, and I get a call on Sunday from AD Adam DeMichael, and AD's like,
Temple legend.
Ryan, did you play baseball in college? Because I played Division III baseball in college, and I was like, yeah. And he's like, okay. And like Coach Rule texted me, he's like, you're coaching baseball with us. I'm like, baseball? And I'm texting Los, and Los is with them too, and it's for Bryant's Little League team. So now here we are coaching Taney Little League down in South Philly. It's me, Coach Rule, AD, and Los. Like, bag of helmets, the balls, the book, the whole deal, right? So we're out there. AD is throwing batting practice. Los is hitting ground balls. Coach is out there throwing pop-ups to the guys. It's great. It was an absolute blast. But we'd go and we'd play games, and everybody knew who Coach Rule was. So it was like some of these like Little League days. It's like, oh, I'm playing against Matt Rule, and like, you know, they're throwing their best. Like we saw everybody's best pitcher, right? Like everybody's throwing their ace. But we were playing a game one day down at Taney, and I'm coaching third base. I was a third base coach, so I was like, you know, cool. I'll do this, no problem. So we're like in the middle of the game, and you know, kid on second base, there's a hit. And what do you do when the ball gets to the outfield? You send the kid. Kid's got to score, right? It's Little League. No one can make a throw home from the outfield. Well, this kid was running with cinder blocks on his feet and got thrown at home. And I can kind of see coach's body language, as you know, just kind of tensing up. Like, what were you thinking? You know, and I'm like, okay, I can justify that. Ball the outfield, guy in second. You know, we didn't score many runs that year, like had to send him. Similar situation happens next inning. Do it again. Just start sending the kid. Sure enough, see the ball go to the plate, out at home. Yep, you're done. You're done. You're out. So I got removed inning coaching third base in a Little League game, which I'm sure we lost by 10. But, you know, again, we were all competitive guys and you know, had a fun experience with that group of kids. And, you know, you never expect, you know, you're playing against Penn State and Notre Dame in the fall and never thought you'd be coaching Little League baseball with some 12 and 13-year-olds in the spring. But a good change of pace, but, you know, kind of had the same result.
We were going to compete in everything we do, from ping pong
Absolutely
to sending kids home to third base. You got axed by one of the most competitive people I've ever come across in Coach Rule, and
you know what? I should have known better. I knew what the result was going to be, but I didn't think I was going to go 0 for 2.
Wow. That's a tough day, man. And you know, it's just probably, if someone else was on base, maybe you're the king. Maybe Ryan Kelly was the guy that sent him home and you're the man. But hey, can't win them all, especially in Little League. You cannot win them all. God bless those parents that sit through those games. I probably will be one someday. So, Ryan, we really appreciate you coming on. You know, you guys have a lot going on, and I'm looking forward to it for a good summer. Any plans this summer up north?
I live 5 minutes from the beach, Colin. You'll know where to find me. It's just like if I was coming down to Cape May to see you. I'd go to about 3 different spots and sure I could spot you there pretty quick.
Yep, that sounds about right. So, Ryan Kelly, Director of Football Operations, American Athletic Conference. Really appreciate you having on.
Thanks, Colin.